Every puzzle has an answer.
On May 17th, episode 33 of Arc 9 of ReZero was released, and it caused quite a stir among the fandom, on a level comparable to other major moments from the anime, such as Subaru's speech, the reveal about Rem, or Subaru's encounter with the entity that grants him his power. In this video, I want to talk about the revelations that were made, and what those revelations mean within the larger framework of the ReZero universe. I can assure you that this episode will delight and surprise you in ways you never imagined. It's going to change the way you see the past and future of the story in the most wonderful way. I'll be breaking everything down, point by point, in a way that's easy for anime-only viewers to understand. After all, this is still material from the light novel, and very few people actually read it. So if you've only watched the anime, no worries. I promise you'll still be able to follow along with this video. Welcome to the revelations from episode 33 of ReZero Arc 9. In the light novels, there's something called named chapters, which are episodes titled after specific characters. Whenever a chapter has this format, it usually means that the character in question is going to do something really important. For example, in Liliana's named chapter, we see how she creates the conditions necessary to defeat Sirius. In Priscilla's chapter, we witness her death. In Ram's chapter, we get to see how he triumphs over ALDEBARAN. I thought it'd be interesting to mention that the title of episode 33, A Girl Named Petra, is similar to the style of named chapters, and it's no coincidence that Petra plays a big role in this part of the story. But what exactly did Petra do? She made a big sacrifice to help Subaru, and it really shows how much she cares. We're not exactly sure what she gave up, but since Season 2, it's been clear that Petra has a natural talent for magic. She's been working hard to improve her skills, so it would not be surprising to assume that what she sacrificed was her budding magical potential. I won't get into all the reasons why I think that was the case, because honestly, it'd take too long. But if she really did offer that in exchange for gaining great power in this moment, it would mean that Petra will no longer be able to use magic for the rest of her life. It's interesting to note that Roswaal had a similar agreement with the same entity Petra is working with before. At that time, Roswaal had to give up 4 powerful spells from his arsenal. If a strong mage like him had to swear off 4 major spells to seal the deal, then I think it's totally understandable that a young girl would offer her bright magical future just to match the Marquis's previous offer. Another idea that I'm not totally on board with is that she might have given up her memories and feelings for Subaru. People propose this idea because at the end of the transaction, Petra declares her love for Subaru once again. I have to admit, I'm not the biggest fan of this theory myself, but I thought I'd mention it in case it's something you're curious about. Before we move on, I want to clarify that there may be other interpretations, but based on what I know about this series, I've listed the ones that I think are most relevant. Let's keep going. Another exciting thing we learned was that there are actually 2 more witch factors out there, even though they technically shouldn't exist. They're just a few outliers, and they're not affiliated with the witch cult's authorities. The cult's authorities have always been around, but the authorities of melancholy and vanity were created later. They were created by someone in the past for the hero and the saint of that time. Here's something interesting. The way the word hero is written in Japanese in this context is different from any other time it has appeared in the series. For instance, when Subaru or Reinhard are referred to as heroes, the author uses a different spelling. I suppose this is Teppei's way of distinguishing the current role of hero from the one that existed 400 years ago. The original hero was Hector, and the saint of that era was Pandora. And even though the factors were custom-made for them, for some reason, despite being compatible with these sins, both of them still lost their minds. Clind is the one who says all this, and he confirms that he inherited Hector's witch factor. I say this with confidence because it's well established that Roswaal's butler has been alive for over 400 years. That means he lived during Flugel's era. Actually, the side stories had already given us a little sneak peek that Clind was a special character. We knew he had a lot of respect for Echidna, and his fighting style was similar to Hector's. He also helped Roswaal with the soul transfer process, which is the same one that lets him reincarnate into new bodies. But let's get back to what we were talking about. The idea that Hector went insane actually aligns well with his behavior so far. He has always had an odd personality. While that alone isn't enough to say he's crazy, the fact that he looks a little thin in this flashback can now be linked to his mental breakdown, which probably led him to neglect his physical health. I've got another interesting fact about Hector to share with you. You might be surprised to learn that he was never actually a warlock. That nickname was given to him by someone else, and according to the novel, it was a term of endearment. I find it so interesting that the one who gave him that nickname was his wife. And up to now, the only character we've seen call him that has been Echidna. I'm not saying Echidna was definitely his wife, but if you go back and reread their dialogues in this scene, a lot of what they say suddenly starts to make sense. I would absolutely love to show you the anime clip that depicts this flashback, but unfortunately, I can't due to copyright issues. So I'll share the most interesting lines with you. At one point, Roswaal calls Hector by the nickname Warlock, to which Hector replies that he hates being called that. It's possible that by that time, he had already separated from his wife, who was the first person to give him that name, and so the name no longer brings him comfort. Later on, Hector says, "I didn't choose to end up like this," and Roswaal gently reminds him that it was his own choice. If we take into account that Hector was the hero of his era, it is plausible to think that while he did not choose to go mad, he did choose to absorb the witch factor, either out of duty as a hero, or because of the responsibility tied to his role. And from that choice came his madness. His conversations with Echidna have always been a bit mysterious, haven't they? They speak to each other like old acquaintances, yet several comments strongly imply that they had to part ways in the past. Hector even says that he used to find her adorable. However, after today's episode opened up the possibility that they were once a couple, suddenly all of those lines gain new meaning, one that actually makes sense. I know the idea of Echidna being Hector's partner might sound a little strange, but it's said that Hector and Pandora's witch factors were created by someone. We already know that Echidna was the one who invented the curse crafts in the world of ReZero, and that she created them in an attempt to replicate authorities. Could it be that after gaining enough experience through developing curses, she was finally able to create the authorities she so longed for? Echidna is often referred to as a creator, and it's easy to see why. In fact, the staff used in Season 3 that attacks the Archbishop of Gluttony was made by her. She also created other elements in the world of ReZero, which is really sad because the people of the current era have forgotten that she made them. I just want to be clear that it hasn't been confirmed that Echidna was Hector's partner, but you know, it actually fits really well with what we already know. Some people might wonder why neither Beatrice nor Puck ever mentioned something like that, if it were true. But don't worry, there's a perfectly good reason for that too. First of all, Echidna created Beatrice shortly before the flashback shown in Season 2, but by that time, Echidna had already been alive for several decades. Betty only got to spend a short time with her mother, and Puck was created some time before the girl. So it's totally possible that Echidna could have been in a relationship with Hector first, and only after breaking up with him did she create the spirits. You know, it's easy to forget that Echidna was once part of the group of heroes that sought to save the world 400 years ago. That group included Flugel, Satella, and other important figures. I think Echidna befriended that group sometime after her relationship with Hector, and it was only after that period of friendship that she created the Sanctuary, then Puck, and finally Betty, in that order. As I mentioned, this is just a theory, not a fact. But it does make some sense, doesn't it? I've even seen some folks suggesting that Cleaned is Echidna and Hector's son, which would explain his resemblance to the former bearer of the witch factor. But to be honest, that theory seems a bit far-fetched to me. In this episode, we also got to learn more about Pandora. What's really remarkable is that she used to be the saint of her era. Up until now, the role of a saint had not been clearly explained in ReZero's lore. You know, it had been mentioned before, but the definition given back then was quite different from what most people think of when they hear saint. In the original web novel, it's said that the ancient dragon Volcanica made a special deal with Lugunica through a saint. I'm pretty sure the light novel version has a different detail, but I could be mistaken, so I'm not sure what the new official definition of saint is within Lugunica. While taking a look at the info, I found out that the role I was talking about is still around, but it's got a new name, Dragon Maiden. So at this point, even I do not know what role this saint actually played 400 years ago. It's interesting though, because Pandora was a good person before, but the witch factor kind of corrupted her. I'm really interested in what Clean said about her. He says her factor has disappeared, but then adds that she might be an exception. We're not sure exactly what he means by exception, but I'd like to offer a suggestion. I think Pandora might be in a different dimension right now. That could explain why Clint can't find her and is calling her missing. In the world of ReZero, parallel dimensions have already been explored. Take Beatrice's library, for example. The Corridor of Memories, which will make its grand entrance in Season 4, is another such space. Even the place where Betty trapped my brothers is one of those dimensional spaces. So, the idea that Pandora is in a similar realm, watching everything through her doves, is not all that far-fetched. You know, I've noticed something interesting about all the places I mentioned. They're all immune to the effects of authorities, and that's something I think we can all appreciate. For example, when Rem was devoured by gluttony, Beatrice was still able to remember her even though she wasn't supposed to. But as soon as she left that place, she lost those memories. So, if we assume Pandora is in a dimension like that, it would explain why no one has been able to find her until now. To sum things up, I want to share something that might not be directly related to the main events of the episode, but after seeing how in previous episodes ALDEBARAN refers to himself as a following star who once tried to become the brightest in the sky and failed, it got me thinking about some theories about his origins. You see, whenever ALDEBARAN talks about his past, he has a unique way of expressing himself. He says that some things were imposed on him from birth, like his love for silver hair. I know it might sound a bit strange from our own world's point of view, but it's normal for preferences to develop little by little over time. But the way he phrases it, saying this love was imposed on him from the moment of his birth, sounds more like he was a clone, and that those things were programmed into him not from birth, but from his creation. This interpretation is supported by the revelations of Arc 8, an arc that unfortunately many readers have overlooked. In that arc, we learn about a failed vessel of Echidna, who laments that the nature of her soul prevents her from fully replicating the Witch of Greed's power. However, after certain events unfold, she finally manages to restore her soul to its original form. By doing so, she gains the ability to not only copy Echidna's power, but also take on her appearance. That is why, at the end of Arc 8, after modifying her soul, her body changes from that of a child to the appearance of the Witch of Greed. But what is most interesting is what happens when she sees ALDEBARAN. She mocks him, saying that while they both had similar goals, she succeeded in restoring her being, while he failed. This visibly frustrates ALDEBARAN, as it seems to remind him of what he could not achieve. My point is this: if Sphinx, the villain of Arc 8, had to evolve her soul in order to become like Echidna, then perhaps ALDEBARAN, if he evolves, would gain the appearance and authority of Subaru. And in turn, if Subaru were to modify his soul by absorbing more authorities, I believe he would eventually become Flugel, the great sage of ReZero, who is often mentioned in legends, and of whom Echidna once said that Subaru was a potential candidate to become. But that is all for this video. So before signing off, tell me, what did you think of the revelations in the latest episode?